Welcome. Today, I wanted to talk to you about some ideas and just a bit of a meandering conversation here. Nothing, I guess, really of significant substance except for the fact that what we're going to try to do is define what a human is. But first, I just want to tell you what a philosophical conversation is, in a way. You see, philosophy is the study of ideas, okay? And so a rambling kind of philosophically based conversation like this is you, in a way, coming with me to explore ideas that I find interesting. So if you can imagine, we're walking in a park that is completely dark, right? Except for perhaps some lights here and there that are sort of showing you the basic structure of the park that we're in. Well, I bring a little torch, and what I do is I'll say, hey, come over here and walk over here and see, have a look at this. I've been thinking about this, right? And I shine a torch on it. And for a brief time, you can enjoy the process of my thinking, the process of the philosopher's thinking. I'm not calling myself a philosopher in a way because, like, I'm not a philosopher. I'm not qualified in any way. I just think about things deeply. But you get to see what it is that I've been thinking about. So I'd like to welcome you along and come with me. Let's explore. Let's explore my brain. Oh, that's interesting. That's an interesting concept on its own. So the title of today's episode is Concepts, Humans and Technology. So I guess that the first thing that we should do is try to define what a concept is, because it's the first word in that little word salad there. And the interesting thing is that although it's possible to define what a concept is, concepts themselves are actually very abstract forms. A concept is the human brain's way to classify everything within its surroundings. So what am I talking about there? It's what philosophers would call the ontology of the things around us. It's the, if you can imagine an encyclopedia, right, that says, oh, that's a speaker. This is a microphone. This is a room that we're in. We're in a room, for example. These are concepts. These are ideas that the human brain has very finely tuned, in some instances, to describe our surroundings. But you see, if we take a concept, so Socrates, a very early philosopher, had a paradox which was called the Socrates paradox. And what he said was, okay, take a pile of sand, okay? So on a table, let's say, there's a pile of sand, okay? Now, that is a concept that we can label and we can clearly say there is a pile of sand, okay? But if you took an individual grain of sand, obviously you couldn't call an individual grain of sand on the table a pile of sand. And then if you added another grain of sand to that one grain of sand, again, you would find it very difficult to refer to it as a pile of sand. And if you continued to add one grain of sand to that pile, eventually you would end up with a pile of sand. But here is where the paradox is created. That you could make the rule that adding an additional grain of sand does not constitute a pile of sand. So the point at which the collection of sand particles turns into a pile of sand is a very grey area. I recently asked this question on my Facebook. I said, beauty is a concept that breaks down in the lightest of scrutiny. And in a way, it was a play on that Socrates paradox. Because if you think about beauty, it's extremely subjective. So the types of comments that I've got was, a beauty is in a way a subjective experience. But even if you break it down as a subjective experience, the person who is experiencing that needs to be able to define what beauty is in order to solve that paradox. Because beauty obviously exists, okay? But at some point, something becomes beautiful, or it becomes no longer beautiful. And it's that I'm interested in defining here. That is the Socrates paradox, is that, for example, let's take a beautiful flower, and I think that subjectively we could call it lots of people would agree that it's beautiful, for example. Well, if you take one petal of that flower off, is it beautiful? Maybe 60% of the people might drop off and say, no, it's no longer beautiful. Okay, well, maybe we remove one more petal, Now, there might be somebody that follows that all the way down to the base, like stem of the plant without any leaves on it. It's still beautiful, but not many. Okay, so the concept of beauty, I believe, or the definition of beauty is also a Socrates paradox. Technology now, because we'll touch on humans last. Concepts we've been through briefly. Again, this is by no means an exhaustive description of what concepts are or any of these terms are. But technology. Now, technology in the sense of our current society, technology is regarded more in an industrial sense, more in a way of being almost scientific in a way, or being something that you would regard as beyond human ability, okay? And in a way, that is the basic definition of technology, is augmenting the human being to be able to perform tasks that under normal circumstances the human being could not perform alone. So let's move on now to human. The human is not a form of technology, but the question is, could a human survive without technology? That's the real question. Because if we lay at the base of this whole thing that it's important for humans to survive, which obviously it is, then the question is, how integral to our survival is technology? The interplay between the human and the technology. And I believe that by defining the interplay between those two things, that we could come to a clearer understanding of what a human is. So in the earliest form of technology, you saw a human pick up a stick, a club, and use it as a weapon. Not perhaps as a weapon to club another human, although I'm sure that happened as well, but a weapon to assist them to kill prey so that they could eat it and survive. The technology is an extension of the human arm, if you think about it. What that club is doing is extending the arm so that it has more reach. It is then able to impact on something without injuring the user. It's a technology, okay? Now, if we fast forward to today, the technology that we use is so advanced compared to, a clubbing something with guns and, phones and these microphones and, the camera. I mean, it's utterly amazing, right? Could we survive without that technology? Are humans and technology integrally connected? So think about this. Because I think that we could agree potentially that it's possible for a human to survive without a clubbing something, a stick. But is it possible for a human to survive without clothes? Okay, so to stay warm. And I think that really we start to identify that it is impossible for a human being to survive without technology. Because is clothing a technology? Yes, it is. Absolutely it is. It's an extension of the human body. In a way, if you could imagine, okay, in an ideal situation, if you're in a cold environment, then you have a layer of fat around your whole body, for example, or you're hairy, like a dog is, or a bear, for example. Well, quite often we don't have that, and unless you're me and you do have a layer of fat around you, then you're probably going to freeze to death, right? In an extremely cold environment. So technology, I do believe, must be necessary for human survival. It is an integral part of what it means to be human. And that raises some important questions, Like, when we define what it is to be a human being, must we also incorporate into that definition the technology that allows us to survive? Because without it, we wouldn't survive. Just to be fair, in the perfect environment where the temperature didn't fluctuate drastically, or it was hot and it wasn't important to wear clothes, and there was easy access to, plant-based foods, in theory, it is possible for a human to survive. But now here's the other thing. Society, the people around you, is that a form of technology? Let's break that down, okay? Does having people around you enhance your ability to survive? I think we would all agree that the answer to that question is yes. Does it solve in a way of problem solving? So in mental work? The answer surely is yes. And does the society adapt and evolve in a way to the requirements of the day, to the requirements of the season and the requirements of... I think the answer is yes. So, interestingly, it may be possible to define society as a form of technology. It's an interesting concept. But let's now that we've explored the most base technological interaction between humans and technology, let's explore the upper echelons of what technological integration into humans means for the definition of a human. So imagine this. Oh, let me ask you this question. Someone has a pacemaker, okay? Is that person less human because they have a pacemaker? I think that you would probably answer no. They're not less human because they have a pacemaker. They're as human as anyone else. Okay, well, that's interesting, right? Now let's consider this. Neuralink. Neuralink is a new technology that's being developed, and it's a chip that will go into the brain and it will interface a computer device with the brain. Now, the question is, somebody who has a Neuralink attached to their brain, are they less of a human being and more of something else because they have the Neuralink connected? Now consider, I don't think that at the time of filming this episode that Neuralink is deployed into humans as yet. There's no human testing. As far as I'm aware, I could be wrong. But even if there was, what we'd be dealing with is a prototype of a later advanced and mature technology. So it's our first deployment towards brain-machine connection. Obviously, it's not going to be very good. If you could perhaps control for example, a remote control car with your brain, for example, or just a video game, I think that would be a terrific outcome by today's standards, where we're at. But now, let's go further, okay? Because even then, you might say that, okay, that's a human being. It's a human being, but we'll call it an augmented human being, a technology augmented human being. Why we would need to call it a technology augmented human being, I have no idea, because we've already defined what technology is, and we can already definitely say that we are all technology augmented human beings. But let's just keep it at that. Now, that human, so we're fast forwarding maybe 300, 400, 500 years, okay? Now that Neuralink technology is mature. There's various providers of the technology, and they're all making their own products. And this thing now has more compute power than your human brain. Okay, so it is no longer an augmentation, or it is an augmentation, but it is so critical to the operation of that specific human that it cannot be, it can't be not installed, okay? Because taking the Neuralink away at that point basically means that you're operating like a dummy, basically, right? This Neuralink is giving your brain access to the whole corpus of human learning of all recorded information at the tip of your fingers as soon as you need it, immediately. Let's go one step further, because perhaps there would still be some people, like the ones that followed the flower right down to the stem, defining beauty, that you would still call that a human. I'm referring to it as that now. It will get to a point sufficiently off in the future where the brain is no longer required, that the compute power that the brain brings to the table is negligible, and the brain will integrate so drastically into something like a Neuralink that all of the brain matter will in effect become part of the central nervous system that carries signals down. It'll become part of the spinal cord, because the actual brain is no longer. This is what I can see, right? The size of your brain, the size of the human brain, is going to start to decrease over time, and the size of the Neuralink implant in the brain will take up that mass within the skull until it has completely replaced majority of the neocortex and the parts of the brain are responsible for that type of, well, the higher end of thought, because there will be no need to feed that much energy into the brain when this machine can actually think at a far greater clip than what the human brain can. Is that a dark future? Let me propose something to you. Humans, the concept of human must involve technology, and as humans, we accept humans' level of integration with technology current to the acceptable technology of the day. So let me just rewind back to the proto-technology of a stick. That person within that society and living with technology sees somebody approaching them that has a gun, understands somehow that they have a pacemaker, Now, you should understand that pacemaker is a form of bio-augmentation, biotechnological augmentation. But a pacemaker is subtle, okay? You can't really see it. Imagine a human being walking up to somebody in that proto state, and they have mechanical arms and legs, okay? And as a result of that, they're able to jump great heights and punch through trees. Okay, so it's a form of bio-augmentation, biotechnological augmentation. Do you think that proto-human is going to define that being as a human? I don't think so. I think they'll call them a demon, right? They'll call them a ghost, a monster, right? Anyway, thank you for coming with me. I appreciate you sticking around. This is the second episode of this channel, and if you've made it this far, you know, this is just the start. I've got so many things I want to talk to you guys about. Hit that subscribe button, not because I'm trying to, because I want to connect with you. I want to connect with you, and I want to walk down this path with you. And I fear that this happens to me sometimes. I'll click on a video that's suggested to me by the algorithm. I'll watch it. I'll think, wow, that was amazing. Or that was a great video. And I click off it. I'm now watching other videos. And then at a later point, I think, oh, I've never been shown that channel again. It's gone. It's gone forever. That's the reason, right? I would hate to think that you clicked on one of my videos, enjoyed it, and then never saw me again. So join me. Thanks, guys.